Warm welcome to the closing press conference for the WCC Central Committee meeting. My name is Marianne Edison and I'm the Director of Communication. It's a great joy to welcome all the journalists present in the Zoom call and also following us online on YouTube channel. At the closing press conference, a panel of speakers from the leadership of the WCC Central Committee will offer an update on decisions made during the 23rd to 29th Central Committee meeting, and on also the preparations for the 11th Assembly taking place in Germany 2022. This is the first meeting ever we have met with the Central Committee online. It's the 65th meeting of the WCC Central Committee. It's a pleasure to welcome the panel, Dr. Agnes Aboom, moderator for the WCC Central Committee, His Eminence Metropolitan Gennadios of Sassima, vice moderator of the WCC Central Committee, and moderator of the WCC Assembly Planning Committee. Bishop Marianne Svensson, vice moderator for the WCC Central Committee, and she's attending our call from USA. We have also the Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber from the Evangelical Church in Germany. She's a member of the WCC Central Committee and also the moderator of the Program Committee. We have also Reverend Professor Dr. Johan Sauka, WCC Acting General Secretary. We will invite the panelists to make a short introduction to mainly focus on achievements from the meeting of the Central Committee. And then we will open up the floor for journalists to ask questions or clarifications. We have also interpretation available for the Zoom call into French, Spanish, and German. Warm welcome following the press conference. I would like to invite Dr. Agnes Aboom to introduce the latest achievements from the WCC Central Committee meeting. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Director of Communication, Marianne. Men and women of the press, thank you for coming. We were a little delayed. I'll just share the overall perspective of this 65th Central Committee, the first one online. As you are aware, we were unable to meet as scheduled last year, and after many meetings of reflection, prayer, and consultation, we agreed with Central Committee members to meet online. Being the first meeting, we agreed also that our agenda would be limited to the very core issues that required the decisions of the Central Committee. In that light, we also were keen to make sure that our fellowship is sustained through prayer and sharing from our various churches and regions. And I must say that this very objective was fairly well met as we listened to the voices of the churches, the communities, the nations from around the world. Each region represented in the fellowship did have time to reflect on its own and to share with us. Very moving testimonies from the region of how the church is coping, adapting to the new context, and therefore its resilience. Secondly, ours was also to address matters pertaining to the assembly. And here I must say that the committees have done a lot of work. We met in our various standing committees to look at the program. One of the things is the strategy, and the strategic plan was amended in order to cover the following year. We also looked at the ongoing work of the council in the various forms, our Green Village in terms of the progress. We want to say that in terms of the limited objectives of this Central Committee, we have achieved. We had the quorum. As you know, we were afraid, being the first online, given the time zone differences, given the inequality in terms of internet access and consistency, but glory to God that all were here in terms of a quorum from the beginning to the end. And we have agreed basically on the program of the assembly, 11th assembly. And I think you'll be hearing more from the chair or the moderator of that committee. We had young people on active as stewards. And so the whole family was together. And this for us has been a celebration as well, to see each other after almost 2 years and fellowship online. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aboum. Then I turn to His Eminence Metropolitan Gennadios of Sassimir, Vice Moderator and also the moderator of the WCC Assembly Planning Committee. We are eager to learn more about the preparation of the assembly taking place in Germany next year.
Thank you, Marianne. And first of all, thank you for this invitation. After this long afternoon, it was a little painful just to reach an agreement and also to finish our work, our agenda. It is true that I have the privilege, but also the joy to chair this group, this committee, which is an ecumenical committee, not only with members of the Central Committee, in spite that this is appointed or elected by the Central Committee, but also with members from other ecumenical partners. It is also the story that this Central Committee online for the first time in the history was limited its agenda only to focus on the assembly matters. And then all the days that we spent, our focus, our mind, and our vision was how to facilitate this process to go to Karlsruhe next year. Of course, one of the documents which was dominated was the Assembly Planning Committee report, because we had a series of meetings since the last one, which was in person in Karlsruhe. We had meetings online, together also with the Assembly Worship Committee, which is a committee part of the APC, of the Assembly Planning Committee. And there the report was presented at the plenary session at the beginning of the Central Committee, and then the report was discussed in detail, also in different standing committees, program, finance, governance and nomination, and finances, looking at the different aspects of the preparation. One of the issues that was discussed this assembly was also the question of the delegations, on delegates or delegation. The churches, they have responded positively to the invitation to set their delegation, but also additional names which have to be accounted in order to reach the proposed number of the assembly participation, which is between 725 to 850. We didn't reach yet this level. We still remain in around 90 churches, 96 exactly, or 95 churches. They have to respond and to serve their delegation. And according to the report of the Nominations and Governance Standing Committee, they have proposed to agree this Central Committee for 104 delegates coming from the various churches. Another issue which was discussed through the report of the APC, which was a very alive discussion, was also the ecumenical conversations. You know that this is an old traditional custom, at least was done on the last two assemblies, to have conversations on issues that really brings the churches in a dialogue, issues that are in the actuality, but also that promote and also are part of the vision and the commitment of the ecumenical movement. And there were discussion about the 16th proposed and agreed ecumenical conversations, and also it was added a new one, 17 ecumenical conversations, which of course they need a lot of time of preparation coming from the staff, and also discussed and analyzed in APC, and finally decided and approved by the governing bodies, which is the executive or the central committee. I would like also to inform you that we plan, it is already scheduled, a meeting of the APC middle of October, where during this period from July now to October, we have to study, elaborate, and all these proposals which were coming from different committees that we have decided, and recommendations in particular to be implemented and to be revised or reviewed by the APC, how will be fit to the program of the Assembly in order to make the final improvement and decision by the Executive Committee in November. The APC Committee, just one more word, works since now 2 years or more, 3 years since its election, its composition, in a very good spirit. At the beginning, of course, any committee is difficult in order to be familiar in a spirit of friendship and fellowship. And because I have this privilege to be for the second time the chair, the moderator, like was also moderator from for the preparation of Busan, and with the long experience, I think we have managed to have a group of which is working really in ecumenical spirit and ecumenical commitment. I think it's enough, and then maybe through the questions, if there are some questions, to go ahead and more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence. It's very inspiring to listen to the preparation of the Assembly. Now we will turn to Bishop Marianne Svensson, Vice Moderator of the WCC Central Committee, and you are based and attending the meeting from California. Is that true? Over to Bishop Marianne.
Yes, thank you very much. I am grateful that I can be a part of the press conference and of the Central Committee through the technology that we have, and to really live into this new technology in the way that we are. It was my privilege during our meeting to be the moderator for the sessions where we listen to the reports and the sharing from the different regions. We, as Dr. Aboom shared with you earlier, we are from all over the world, and we have 8 different regions. So let me share with you the regions that were reporting. We heard from the Pacific, and from Asia, and from Africa, and from Latin America, and from the Middle East, and from North America, and from the Caribbean, and from Europe. So it was a thorough sharing from all over the world. And all of them, in their sharing about what was happening in their region, began to talk to us about the effects of the COVID pandemic on their region and how they were dealing with that. Issues of violence and woundedness, certainly concerns in the Middle East around violence, and concerns in Canada about the woundedness of the discovery of the graves of the children, of over 1,000 children from the residential schools who were part of the indigenous children that lived there. We heard from the different regions about issues of the environment and climate justice and the concerns that they have. We heard about their issues around racism and how they're dealing with issues of racism. We heard from the regions about how they're trying to work together in their ecumenical efforts and how they're doing different things ecumenically. We heard about their work towards reconciliation and unity as we prepare for the Assembly. And we heard about the things that they're doing to get ready for the Assembly. We also heard about the efforts of the different parts of the world on the pilgrimage of justice and peace, and how they are working together on a pilgrimage of justice and peace. It was amazing to hear from all of the different regions of the world, and to hear how they're preparing for the Assembly and to send people to the Assembly and to participate. It was also important to realize how important the fellowship was from all of the regions of the world, and how our spiritual relationship when we come together is so very, very important. We also received greetings and comments from both the Greek Orthodox Patriarch and also from His Holiness the Catholicos of the Armenian Apostolic Church. So we had important times of sharing together from the regions all over the world. And I wanted to be able to share this with you in the press conference.
Thank you very much, Bishop Marianne Svensson, for sharing the stories from the regions. And we can also point out that many of the stories are already published on the WCC website, and many more are coming the next coming days. Then it's time to turn to Germany. And it's a great joy also to welcome Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber, representing the Evangelical Church in Germany, member of the WCC Central Committee, and also the moderator of the Program Committee, and also representing the local host for the next assembly. I turn to you, Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber.
Thank you. As host churches, we are very pleased with the decision taken by the Central Committee to hold the 11th Assembly of the World Council of Churches in Karlsruhe 2022. However, nobody currently knows how the situation around the COVID-19 pandemic will develop. Therefore, we are in close contact with the German authorities and all partners in Germany, France, and Switzerland, and we are monitoring the situation in the region and around the world very carefully. We will do everything possible. We want to hold the assembly in Karlsruhe. In close cooperation with the WCC, the host churches in Germany, France, and Switzerland are preparing the different assembly activities for the participants. These include ecumenical encounters, excursions, and the weekend program with a cultural evening which intends to offer an insight into the history and the special characteristics and challenges of the European region. An ecumenical encounter program for visitors to the assembly who want to know more about the work of the WCC will be prepared in international working groups. The thematic priorities of the assembly are taken up and discussed at 9 so-called encounter places in Karlsruhe around the event location. For the excursion program on the weekend of the assembly, around 50 to 60 excursions are planned, which are prepared in local ecumenical and cross-border groups under the theme Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace. In addition, there is an accompanying cultural program for the delegates, ecumenical guests, visitors, and staff, which the city of Karlsruhe and the local churches organize in consultation with the WCC and the host committee. We as European churches need to meet churches from all over the world. I hope that we will learn from them to see our work and our role as churches from a different perspective. I hope for impulses for our faith and a happy, clear, and unmistakable testimony for justice and peace, for hope and faith. I hope for an important boost for our ecumenical situation in Europe as well as in Germany. Finally, I hope that the Assembly will strengthen the role and responsibility of the churches in our society. The preparations show that secular institutions, cultural institutions, and politicians are really interested in the Assembly. They recognize that the churches and religious communities are so important multipliers and engines for social development. I hope that the Assembly will send out a wake-up call around the world, especially in a situation in which cohesion and closeness are put to the test by the corona pandemic, where our vulnerability comes into focus the Assembly can send an important message. Only together we can manage to face the challenges of this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber. Together are we much stronger. Then I will turn back to the Ecumenical Center in Geneva and ask our acting General Secretary, Reverend Professor Dr. Johan Sauka, about the preparations for the 65th WCC Central Committee meeting and taking place online and postponed 2 times. Over to Dr. Sauka. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marianne. I was told I have to speak 3-4 minutes, so I try to be brief. First, as was said, the first online meeting. What impressed me most, members of the Central Committee in different time zones were together the full time. We had all the days the quorum, which is very important. And we have to remember that some were early in the morning, some late at night, but people were eager to stay in the meetings and discuss the issue. Deep commitment and deep faith. Second thing, we are all thinking, how could we organize the Central Committee with so many topics, with so many people, more than 150, discussing issues and having outcomes? And we had great outcomes. So very briefly to tell you how we achieved these outcomes was a very serious preparation before the meeting, enormous preparation. Preparation in a way that we counted the minutes, how many minutes each topic has to be discussed. And in some cases, we have pre-recorded presentations to be sure we keep in time. Then we have presentations in plenaries, discussions, but then people moved into groups, so-called standing committees, according to specialties. One with finance, other one with program, another one with nominations, a policy reference committee. So they could discuss in much greater depth the issues, and they would come with recommendations to the plenary to be adopted by the Central Committee as a body as a whole. The last thing which I was very impressed, we acted as a fellowship, as a church organization. Topics which are topics of the world, but dealt with from the perspective of the gospel and from the perspective of our faith. Every day we started with prayer and ended with prayer. And sometime in the midst of presentations, the request was to stop and pray. For instance, when we had the sharing about the situation of children killed or the body discovered in Canada, said, let's pray for it, or let's pray for the situation in Middle East. So we had this experience of prayer and spirituality during the sharing, which was very moving. At the same time, we realized that from 2020 until now, we had a list of more than 100 people, former Central Committee members, but also members from our churches who died because of COVID. And the request was, let's mention those names in a prayer. So we started our meeting with a memorial service. And while we were praying, the names of those who passed away were mentioned. It was very moving. So all in all, we had a great Central Committee with very important outcomes, and which was dealt with in a very spiritual atmosphere. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Father Sauka. We have already received more than 9 questions, and we have promised the panelists after a very long day of work that we will not go on for more than 50 to 60 minutes. So we will take the first round of questions, and I call on the journalist Esther Suter from Switzerland to ask your first question. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. My question goes to Reverend Johan Sauka. I'm sorry, now the question has disappeared. I had it here. Yes. The fact that you are acting General Secretary and you are Orthodox, this is the first time the Orthodox tradition is represented in this function. May your presence have an influence on any Orthodox member church, or even on the Orthodox Church in Georgia, for instance? And if so, in which way?
Well, you see, thank you so much. Maybe I'm in this position as Orthodox, but the Orthodox churches were present in the All Council of Churches since 1948 as founding members. So we didn't come later. We are just founding members of the All Council of Churches. Now, it happened that I was given this position, and I do my best in an interim period until we have an election of a general secretary. What is the influence? The influence will be seen later. What I can tell you now, even the Church of Bulgaria or the Church of Georgia, although they are no longer members of the All Council of Churches, they still send students to the Bose Ecumenical Institute, and we are very close in relation with them. They are no longer members, but I wouldn't say that they are inactive. So what else I can say? I think we had our own contribution to the development of the team as we prepare the assembly, but not in a kind of a way which is different from the past, because I was asked to be general secretary to manage an institution, not to speak imposing from this position Orthodox perspectives on the organization. I will be a witness, as I have been always during all my time in the ecumenical movement, but we see the impact over the years or as we move to the assembly.
Thank you, Father Sauka. Then we will turn to Leonardo Felix in Argentina. You have also a question to the panel. Maybe you could also address which one you prefer to ask first.
Sí, acá estoy. La pregunta es en general el Comité
I'm here.
Central.
My question is about the
Sí,
Central Committee.
Está puesta ahí. What is the Central Committee's evaluation of youth participation in the spirituality and activities of the WCC?
Thank you for the question. Maybe we should turn to Dr. Aboum and the Metropolitan Gennadios. The question is about youth participation in the spirituality of the council.
Thank you for that question. As I did indicate, although we were not meeting in person, we have had stewards who are actually young people. The whole prayer life and the prayer moments, we have had young people participating in those offering of prayers. We must also indicate that our rules do require us to try as much as possible to attain 25% of young people. The young people were also present as advisors to the Central Committee. They also are an important part in the preparation of the assembly. We are aware of the challenges they are facing, but we want to say that although we were online, the young people were very much active and present in the prayers, in the advice, in the Central Committee itself. And of course, they have a commission, and we value their input. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aboum. Should we also turn to Metropolitan Gennadios when coming to youth involvement in the assembly?
But the youth presence and participation, first of all, in general, in the life of the council is improved the last years, little by little, with a lot of effort, that the youth are part of our ecumenical family, not only for that, but the youth is also the preparation for them for the next generation, means for the future. There will be church leaders and also members of the institution. Of course, also in the APC, we have a presence of the youth. Their voices or our voice is very strong, and because it's the voice of youth committed, those that are participate, they participate not because they have to be there, but because they are committed to the ecumenical movement and also to the vision of unity, and also to this pilgrimage of justice and peace that we have to go together in a together way. And with all due respect, as I said, we listen their voices and their voice of each one, like we listen also the woman's voice, the disabled, the indigenous, all these categories of people that is under the globe of the human society, and also represent also the life of our churches, and as also members of various ecumenical partners.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Then we have received a question from Madagascar, and my team member Klaus is going to read the question. It's directed to either Metropolitan Gennadius or Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber. Klaus, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, we have received a question from Vololona Yania Rasoveloni Irina from Madagascar, journalist at the Radio Fahasavana. And her question is, the African representatives in the Central Committee are concerned about the possibility of the African delegates going to the Assembly in Karlsruhe, given the deterioration of the economic situation in Africa caused by the pandemic, as well as the lack of reliable vaccines. Has the Central Committee discussed how the WCC might solve this problem?
Could we just repeat again, because the connection was not very well.
The concern from the journalist from Madagascar is if the Central Committee has discussed how to handle the situation with access to vaccine and to travel to Germany, but also the financial implication for the member churches to afford to be present in the assembly.
I don't know if Bishop Petra wants to say something from the German side, and then I can say something from the WCC.
Should I turn to Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber first of all when it's coming to enter Germany?
Yes, it's one of the really troubling questions we have to face at the moment. And it's not only a question from Africa, but also from Africa. How can we manage a situation that is unclear about infections, about the possibility with vaccination and all that? We try to be in a close contact with all the people in the host churches, and we try to prepare as well as we can, but nobody knows exactly what will be there, our future in August or in September, or for the next Central Committee in February. So the only chance we have is to be very close together and to react closely to the changing situations. And also we in Germany try to do everything to ask our government, our people help that the question of vaccination justice is taken as seriously as it should be. It's not only about our assembly, it's about justice and peace in the world.
Thank you, Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber. Should we turn to Metropolitan Gennadius as the moderator of the APC committee?
Of course, the council is aware and is very carefully, as Bishop Petra said, follows the situation of the pandemic. It follows very well what the World Health Organization and other organizations they say about the pandemic. They trust our German host. They try to do the best. The council does not. The council wants nobody to miss this unique occasion, which is the assembly. And I think we go step by step and little by little regarding how the situation will be improved. that everybody who will take part to this great event is of course, we are very aware. Of course, we have discussed, and let's see if this will work, that the next Central Committee, next February, which is already scheduled and decided to be in person. And we do hope that the situation will be improved, that everybody can be present in the meeting next February. Is one of the main questions that the Council is following very carefully and with a lot of sincerity. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence, and also to all journalists trying to get access and ask your questions. We are lining up, all of you, and hopefully we will manage to handle all the questions before we will close the call. I would invite Ulrich Schmittener from Ökumenische Informationsdienst in Germany. The floor is yours. And I think you are asking a question to either Father Sauka or Dr. Abom. I have seen your question. Do we have technical problems? Then we would probably turn to the next question. Marcelo.
I have his question here in front of me. I can read it.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is coming from Ulrich Schmittener from the Ökumenische Informationsdienst. Every effort is needed to change the weight of consumption and production, especially for the global upper and middle classes. A petition from the Ecumenical Initiative groups to the WCC last November read, "We ask the World Council of Churches to declare a decade on justice, peace, and the integrity of creation for the period 2021 to 2030. The question is, which steps will the WCC take for a common witness of the Christian churches on these central issues of faith and survival? And will the WCC deliberate and decide to declare a decade on justice, peace, and integrity of creation?"
Thank you, Marcelo. Could we turn to Dr. Abom and then Dr. Sauka?
Thank you. A very substantive pillar of the work of the World Council of Churches for a very long time. You will recollect that justice, peace, and integrity of creation was an overarching thematic strategy that the Council had after its assembly in Colombia, in Vancouver, in fact. Thereafter, a number of other aspects of that have emerged, and therefore the Council moved on to develop economic justice, climate justice, and so many other aspects, peace, justice and peace. When you ask about steps, as I said, the World Council has three pillars actually. One is unity and mission. The other one is, unity, mission, and justice, and ecumenical formation. Because as His Eminence said, we are very keen on the intergenerational leadership and continuity. As we harvest now the work of the pilgrimage of justice and peace, which is very heavily rooted in the JPIC, we are aware that what you have raised is important. Therefore, the harvesting from different communities, churches, will enable the assembly, the ecumenical conversations at the Brune, wherever, to really try to refocus the thematic areas, as you've already said. Just to give you a hint, if you look at the JPIC, the Justice and Peace, pilgrimage of justice and peace, there are 4 areas that have already been highlighted that relate to what you have requested. You have truth and trauma, you have land justice, you have overcoming racism, you have gender based violence. So already we are into that. The second aspect is really marking the footprints of our global pollution and so forth. We hope at the assembly, as we bring all our thoughts and reflections together, it will begin to inform the next program. Of course, the churches will have a lot of input to it. As you very well know, the pandemics are partly as a result of the rupture in the creation, the destruction in the creation. So what am I trying to say here? I'm saying what you are asking is already part and parcel of our focus, our history, and where we are at now in terms of the pilgrimage. It is actually encompassing all the issues you are raising, and hopefully the results from different communities, churches, people of faith, other faith, will help us redesign appropriate methodologies based on the lessons learned in the last 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aboum. We have 7 more questions. I don't know if Father Sauka want to add something. Otherwise, we turn to the next question on our agenda, and it's a raised hand from Martin Hegger. The floor is yours.
Yes, good afternoon or good morning. My question is about the consensus method. How was it working online? Was it possible to use that method? Did you have topics or decisions which necessitated the use of the consensus method? Did you use blue or red cards like in an assembly? How was it working?
Thank you for the question. Should we ask Father Sauka to respond as the acting general secretary on the preparations?
So I tell you what happened. People used their blue cards and their orange cards. We had many times blue cards. And then whenever you have a blue card, you ask people to speak and you're given the chance to speak. That's why we are late now. But we spoke and came back and then discussed again and changed. And then we came to a consensus approval. So I think it's great. It was not voting, but was discussing and listening to everybody who had a concern. So at the end of the day, even let's say a minority has a chance to be listened and to express what they want to say. So it's working even online, Martin.
Thank you.
Thank you, Father Sauka. Then we will also turn to the Vice Moderator, Bishop Marianne Svensson. You also might be able to comment on that question, and you had also something else in mind. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. First, I was going to comment on the climate and environmental issues, because when we had the sharing from the different regions, every region of the world had something to say about dealing with the climate and environmental crisis. They talked about the occurrence of cyclones and floods and landslides and extensive deforestation and land and water grabbing orchestrated by multinational companies. And they talked about efforts where they were dealing with so much water shortage in some places and droughts in some places. So it really is given the attention of everyone. So I wanted to mention that as well. But then in terms of how we did with an online meeting, I have my orange and my blue card, and was fascinated by how well that did work. But also during the time of breaks and independent time, people would use the video conferencing to chat with each other, to continue the fellowship and to keep the fellowship alive. And so I was amazed, and Dr. Aboum would invite people to give greetings at the beginning. And so I was amazed to see how many different places in the world people really were participating and were present from all those different places. And so many voices participated, both in the chat and in online and in presentations and as a part of the worship and in raising questions in the times of discussion and the consensus decision-making. So it worked, I think, even better than we thought it would. And so many people gave us their gratitude and their thanks for how well it worked at the end of the meeting. That's what I wanted to share.
Just share one point.
Of course, Dr. Agnes.
Yeah. Thank you, Father, and thank you, Bishop. Consensus, by the time you arrive to discerning the will of God, to discerning that it is time now to have a feel of the house and to therefore move into decision mode, you've already had information. It's a very key part of consensus. You've had hearings, and discussions come out of those hearings and ideas, which then are crystallized in reports. And these reports form a basis of the mood of the house. As Father said, some things were very demanding. We even had to edit online to show you we worked like we were here in Wiesethoft Hall as a group. So we moved from information sharing, hearing, to decision making by consensus. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aboum. Then we have also received a question from social media, and I will ask my team member Santi to read the question. It's to Metropolitan Gennadios.
Yes, a question from a young follower from Athens, Greece, in our Twitter message, social media accounts. How are the Orthodox WCC member churches preparing for the assembly this time? Is there a pre-assembly taking place, and how much the pandemic situation has affected their work?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'm coming from the end to the beginning of the question. Let's say, set up the situation of the pandemic within our Orthodox churches, Eastern and Oriental also. It is true that within all the churches, the Orthodox also churches were struggling with the situation since now more or less 2 years. They have changed, the pandemic changed completely or a part of their daily life and also their liturgical life, their ecclesial life, because of the restrictions of the different countries and the different governments due to the struggling with the pandemic. It's completely different from Turkey that I'm living and to be, and completely different in United States or Germany. But all the churches, they were faithful to the restrictions, and they have tried to be faithful to that, and also to assume and to guarantee the health, I mean, the good health of the faithful. But also on the other hand, the faithful also, they were very disciplined, and in spite of there were a lot of reactions because there were twice that, for example, or wouldn't have the normal, the regular way to celebrate Christmas, Easter for twice, and because of the pandemic situation, and the churches, they had to change the program and the way to celebrate this great event of Christianity. We had also the other hand, and this is very sorrow and very painful, that we lost a lot of people, a lot of faithful due to the situation, but also in the leadership also level. A patriarch, the Patriarch of Serbia passed away, and very predominant church leaders, Serbians, Greeks, Russians, and priests also, and friends, and ecumenical friends, that they were involved with the World Council of Churches and the ecumenical movement. Also, they passed away, and we keep them always in our prayers. Now, related to the preparations, we are in a good, let's say, situation, good stage, that all the member churches, Eastern and Oriental, to the WCC, they have sent their delegations. Even some of them, they have sent also additional names which have to be considered. Of course, we are now in the period that begins the preparation process, how to prepare for the assembly. The council is on solidarity with the member churches, the Orthodox, and there is a custom or a tradition, let's say, to have a pre-assembly inter-Orthodox consultation, which is very well prepared always by the staff and the council, and with the involvement of all the Orthodox churches to participate to that consultation. We plan to have this by the end of February and to be hosted in Cyprus by the Church of Cyprus. The Orthodox Church of Cyprus will host this pre-assembly Orthodox meeting in one of the dioceses of Amochosos, Pramagusta, and Constantia. This is not the only way of preparation. All the churches, they have their own mechanism how to prepare their members. Also, they are members of regional and ecumenical institutions, regional councils, where also organize local or regional meetings, and the Orthodox participate. And also, this is also the life of the council through all this meeting of the governing bodies and commissions. The question of the assembly preparation is part of their agenda, and also with the participation also of Orthodox members from both families. Also, there will be a kind of a publication of this international Orthodox consultation, which will be also distributed in the assembly for just not keeping only the history, but also to see how the Orthodox evaluate and analyze the whole process of the assembly theme in their own, according to their own tradition or traditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Then we have 4 more questions, and we will take them in the order that we will take the one from Romania, but it will be read by Marcelo because of internet connections. Then we have 1 question from Dexter, and then we have 1 from Argentina, and then we have finally from Stephen. Over to Marcelo. And I think you are addressing your question to Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber.
Yes, this is coming from Reverend Dr. Alexandru Ohica. And the question is, after a lot of days of discussions, what is for the Central Committee of the WCC the biggest challenge in organizing the Karlsruhe Assembly?
The biggest challenge I personally see is that we don't leave people behind. We spoke about it a little bit earlier. And that we have enough trust, confidence, and engagement, although the situation is such an unclear one. From the German perspective, it's my message to everybody, to our host churches, to the leadership of my own church, to the host committee, as well as to the responsible political leaders who try to assist us and who are looking forward to the meeting. So it's a struggle against something like a gray atmosphere around the world. And maybe the Christian message is the best message to deal with such an atmosphere.
Thank you, Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber. Then we will turn to Dexter Van Ziele. The floor is yours. And I think you addressed your question on membership matters, maybe to either Metropolitan Gennadios or Father Sauka.
Okay. I'll let whoever wants to answer this question, let them decide. But from looking at the documents, I see that the Amity Foundation in China is set to be recognized as a specialized ministry in a working relationship with the WCC. And this raises an interesting question because we know that there's human rights concerns related to the underground church or Christians in China and also Uyghur Muslims in China. If the WCC were to speak about the mistreatment of Christians or Uyghurs at its upcoming assembly, would this have negative repercussions on the people associated with this foundation? Would the Chinese Communist Party, in effect, take it out on people who are affiliated with the WCC? And do you think that the WCC's assembly will address the mistreatment of Christians and Uyghurs at its next meeting? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Who want to respond?
It's a very clever question. And we bring us the Council of the Chinese in conflict. You know, the MIT opened an office here in Geneva, and don't remember, it was a couple of years on, yes, about, yes, 2-3 years, yes. And you know what has been this foundation. I think the priority of this foundation is printing Bibles also around the world, billions of Bibles, not only for the United Bible Society, but also for all those that they want to print the Bible in different languages. And we have also the privilege that the executive committee of the council met there was MIT, and we have hosted by a day, an afternoon. We have seen what they do. Was very friendly, visit, and we are very grateful to see how in a country like China, they print the Word of God, which is the Bible, and sometimes we are surprised on that and this sometimes antinomy. On one hand, they print the Bible, and on the other hand, how they behave, or how is the understanding of the Christians in this huge country like China. I think we have to differentiate the role of specialized ministries working together with the council and the role of the council by itself. If the council wants to react or to have a voice for an important issue, which is, touches people's hearts and minds and particular lives for justice and peace, I think the council is free to do, in spite that MIT is a member or in a good collaboration with WCC. There is this freedom. There is a special criteria of working together with the specialized ministries, and we have to differentiate and not to mix that there will be some precautions, as you said, if something is happening in China and the council has to react with, let's say, a strong voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminence. Then we will turn to the question from Argentina, and I think it will be read by Klaus, and we will address that question to Bishop Marianne Svensson, who were also the one reporting on the regional meetings.
I'm afraid I have to involve Marcelo here because I don't have the full question.
Okay, then we turn to Marcelo.
Veronica Beach is the press officer of the Evangelical Waldensian Church of the River Plate. Her question is related to the region. She would like to know if the leadership of the WCC has received any particular request from Latin America in terms of involvement in the next assembly. She means requests in which the churches will start to work on issues in advance to prepare for the assembly this year already and be more equipped to arrive in Karlsruhe.
Yes, I can give an initial response, but then Metropolitan Gennadios may wish to respond as well in regards to the assembly. But we've had really good participation from Latin America, from the Latin American president, and from the region and from the different countries in the region. And we had a really thorough report this week. And so they really are, even with all of the things that are happening in their part of the world, preparing and getting ready and clearly participating in every way that they can. I think that would be the first thing that I can say, and he might say more specifically, or Father Saka may be able to say some more things specifically as well.
Thank you, Bishop Marianne Svensson. Should we turn to Metropolitan Gennadius about requests from Latin America in the assembly preparations?
For the moment, a specific question, no, to be honest. And frankly speaking, no, we don't receive, but they're not only the Latin Americans, they're all the regions that can address a question or a demand or something. But I think Latin Americans, because they're still struggling and they are suffering a lot with the pandemic, maybe they don't have the time to, but they will come maybe later. But this invitation for demanding something specific from their region, this I think is addressed to all regions with the respect, not only to Latin Americans. And we are open to receive any kind of recommendation which will be deal with participation, the program under the life of the Castle Assembly.
Thank you, Your Eminence. I will switch the order. Stephen, you will get the final question, and I would like to call on Reverend Fubang Geraldine from Cameroon to ask your question. I don't know which one you prefer to ask the question to.
Yes, Maria, good afternoon or good evening. I don't know if my mic is unmuted or my volume is okay because we are having network challenges here in Cameroon. I'm in Cameroon, Southwest region of Cameroon, and I'm joining the press conference from the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon. I am a journalist working with the PCC. I wish to find out, with the raging pandemic, what strategy is put in place for a plan B to ensure that the conference, General Assembly holds should the pandemic keep raging on. And secondly, I wish to find out what motivated the theme for 2020's General Assembly. 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What about the plan B for the Assembly? Who want to respond on that first? Dr. Agnes, you haven't had a question for a few minutes.
Let me start from the last part of her question, namely what motivated. As a council, as a movement, we reflected on the global context. We also realized that we had not come back to Europe after a long time, especially after the assembly in Uppsala in 1968. Europe became a focus for us. A lot has happened politically, economically, religiously, even the population profiles. The motivation for the theme, which I must say, as we have proceeded to develop it, to reflect and pray over it, has become a divine intervention, because the theme really addresses matters that have to do with relationships, with the deficits in love. And so when you read and you stop to reflect on the theme, Christ's love moves the world to reconciliation and unity. It could never be so appropriate, so relevant with the COVID, with the economic decline, with the issues of immigration, migration, refugees. And so as we looked at Europe, saying we want to come back to where we had started some time back, we've gone around, but it's also now need to be in solidarity, in companionship with the church and the churches in Europe, with the people in Europe. A lot of things came out, particularly in terms of relationships, and His Eminence could comment more. Following consultation prayer, it was not a one-person decision, but it came out of deep reflection of our faith, of our context, and of our brothers and sisters in Europe. And we had a moving invitation by the churches in Europe, and particularly Germany. Let me leave it at that and come to your other question, which the whole issue of the pandemic. the churches are adapting to the pandemic. But as you can see yourself, and as you read and as you hear, it is a mutating virus. We cannot speak authoritatively on X, Y, Z. But when it comes to plans, this Central Committee was a test case for us to see whether in the event of other developments, we could still fellowship, we could still be in solidarity with one another, even though not in face. And I think the results are yes. So this may inform future gatherings. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aboum. Then we will turn to the final question and then we will close the call. And I would suggest, Stephen, that we ask each panelist to respond briefly on your question as the final response from the press conference. The floor is yours, Stephen.
Thank you very much, Stephen Brown, the WCC news team. And my question is, what for each of the panelists, what do you hope for the future of the WCC from the Karlsruhe Assembly?
Thank you, Stephen. What's the hope when it's coming to WCC, leading up to the Assembly and after? Should we turn to our vice moderator in California, and then we'll go to the panelists in the main hall?
Very good, thank you. I'm really happy to respond. I really begin with where Dr. Aboum just finished, and that is the whole reality of the spiritual nature of our fellowship and the unity in our fellowship is more important than ever. So that when we really do focus on Christ's love moving us, we are talking about, after Karlsruhe, continuing to walk together in justice and peace, to walk together to attend to the integrity of creation and to deal with all of the climate and environmental issues of the world. We continue to walk together to end violence and to end the violence against women as we continue in the efforts around Thursdays in Black. And we really will be moving together to see reconciliation and unity around the world. And we are positioned as a Christian body in ways stronger, I think, than ever before, because we have entered into this very difficult time and done it like jumping the hurdles at the Olympics. We are finding a way to be together, even in the most difficult situation, with the separation and with the things that were caused by the COVID pandemic. And so our faith and the resilience of our faith gives us an opportunity to have a witness in the world. I believe that the hope of the world relies in the ecumenical Christian witness. And we are working together with other religions and with other faith groups, but the ecumenical Christian witness can be stronger than ever. And so I think Karlsruhe will just push us forward into the future in an incredible way.
Thank you, Bishop Marianne Svensson. Then we will try to move to the panel in Geneva, and then we will go finally to Karlsruhe, if it's okay for Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber to be the final speaker. Should we begin with Vice Moderator Metropolitan Gennadios?
Yes, now we are asking to be a little prophetic, to become a little prophet. For the question is that we must be committed that the Karlsruhe Assembly has to remind to the churches and also to the churches that the primary vision of their commitment to be not only the council, but in the ecumenical family is to keep the vision of unity of the church. And nobody will be excluded from this pilgrimage, and we have to go and to work together. Karlsruhe has a particular interest because of this situation of pandemic, and we see that many things will be changed that we have expected that to take place in Karlsruhe. Now we are thinking day by day that the Karlsruhe Assembly will have something to bring new to the ecumenical movement, but also to the life of the WCC. Then, for me personally, the great hope is that for the future of the WCC and for our churches, to keep them in a spirit of togetherness, to work together, and to continue their vision, which was established in 1948, that we have to continue our work for this visible unity and the Christian fellowship, and nobody to be excluded from this pilgrimage. Thank you.
Thank you, Metropolitan Langenados. Then we'll turn to our moderator, Dr. Agnes Aboum. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marianne. Indeed, this is a kind of prophetic question. There is a lot that our churches anticipate out of Karlsruhe. One of the things that we believe would be critical is bringing together the lessons learned of resilience by our churches in these very difficult moments, so that those lessons and methods will be coherently put together for future, because we do see the need. Secondly, the church and the ecumenical movement at large is called upon again to reaffirm the dignity and the right of every person. The dignity in the sense that before and during this pandemic, the violation of the right of a person has become much more evident, and the dignity of people. Dignity is God's right to everyone. So that and how we translate that into concrete terms will be very important. We have issues of children. Let me touch on the trauma question as I talk of dignity and inclusiveness that the two moderators have talked about. How do we walk together as pilgrims on the way to unity, or on the way together as we pray, we work together in a context that is so divisive, that is so toxic? This is the context in which the church wants to proclaim the message of good news, of love, of liberation. And so how we will translate that going forward will be important. And I think Bishop Mariana has touched on it, and His Eminence. Finally, I would want to say that we will be, and we are, in a prayerful mode that God will unveil to us what we really need to hear, what we need to see, what we need to do as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aboum. Then we turn to Father Sauka.
Thank you. I would say that the idea of search for unity is not ours. This is Christ's testament to the world. And as people of faith, I have to accept what Christ prayed for. So either I wish or not, Christ's will be done. So I believe WCC have a future, because it's God's plan, not human plan. Secondly, what I have learned in my position, but also during my experience in the World Council of Churches for more than 25 years now, there are many who are criticizing the WCC. But in this time of COVID, even those who are critical to WCC came closer to the WCC, realizing that it's important to come as a family of faith, as Christians, to support one another, to care for one another, and to witness together to our common values. We may have an idealistic view of visible unity. In 70 years, we did not reach that visible unity, and maybe we go other 140 years. God knows. But still, we have so much in common, which as Christians bring us together, helping us to move together, witnessing to the world our common values. And the last point, what COVID also taught us is not only Christians we belong to one another, but the whole world. We are bound to one another as a human family, because the virus did not choose between confessions and religions. It just touched humanity. So our concern as the World Council of Churches is primarily to look at Christians and Christian unity, but also to look at the world, at humanity, and the whole of creation. Because God's purpose in Christ was to bring unity in Christ of humanity and the whole of the cosmos, according to our scriptures.
Thanks, Father Sauka. Then we turn to Germany. Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber, over to you.
From a German perspective, my hope is that after the assembly in Karlsruhe, our people will be full of engagement or full of strength, experiencing that the Christian community is such a colorful and lively and really interesting community. There is a thinking in Germany, as well as in many parts in Western Europe, that Christians as well as churches are something from the past. And you don't believe if you are a modern person. It's not useful and you don't need it. And I hope that people also in Karlsruhe and in the neighborhoods and in Germany will discover that this movement is young and really vivid, and that the message we have to share is something that helps to believe, to live, and to move forward to a better world.
Thank you, Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber. It's time to say thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Dr. Aboum, Metropol Langenadius, Bishop Marianne, Bishop Petra Bosse-Huber, and Father Sauka. A big thank you to the interpreters that you have been able to stay a little bit longer than we expected. Thank you very much to the journalists. We have almost 30 in the call, even in a very late hour in the European context, but we are gathering all over the world. Stay tuned and you will have much more information on the WCC website the next coming hours, also from the press conference. We will finalize the press conference to look at the latest video on the WCC 11 assembly in Karlsruhe. Welcome to Karlsruhe. See you online.